Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the subcommittee at any time. Welcome to today's hearing entitled Risky Business Part 2, the DOE Loan Guarantee Program. Opening statements. For me, I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. Today, the Energy Subcommittee will hold the second installment of Risky Business, the DOE Loan Guarantee Program. This is a timely update from the first installment we held February of 2017, a hearing I also had the opportunity to chair. This morning, we will examine the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office, or LPO, and its taxpayer investment portfolio made during the Biden administration. Further, we will explore LPO's role in future in supporting the next generation of energy technologies. In the Energy Policy Act of 2005, Congress authorized the Secretary of Energy under the Title 17 to provide loan guarantees to innovative and advanced energy technologies, including fossil energy, nuclear energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. However, Congress didn't stop there. 2 years later, it expanded this authority by creating the Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing, or ATVM, loan program in the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, which supported the domestic production of fuel-efficient advanced technology vehicles. With these vastly expanded authorities, the Obama administration made a series of investments which actually embroiled in bankruptcy. One famous case was the solar company Solyndra, which defaulted after receiving only a mere $500 million with a B dollars in loan guarantees from the Department of Energy. During our committee's 2017 hearing, I sat in this very seat and voiced my concern over the potential cost to the American taxpayer if any one of the many proposed projects, like the Ivanpah Solar project, were to fail and default. Fast forward now to earlier this year, and the project has announced that it will close ahead of schedule, perhaps as early as the end of next year. The original plan was for this facility to operate under 2039, eventually paying back the $1.6 billion with the B dollar loan DOE awarded the company, but this is no longer going to be the case. With the passage of the Energy Act of 2020, Infrastructure Investment, Jobs Act IIJA, and the Inflation Reduction Act, LPO again expanded its loan capacity and the scope of the projects. The Energy Act of 2020 expanded eligible projects that use already commercialized technologies. Likewise, IIJA expanded the scope of eligible projects under the ATVM to include medium and heavy-duty vehicles, trains, maritime vessels, and hyperloop technologies. The Inflation Reduction Act established new programs such as the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment EIR program under Section 1706 of Title 17 and increased LPO's loan authority over tenfold from $40 billion to $412 billion. New programs like the EIR program were given $250 billion in loan capacity, while the Carbon Dioxide Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Program was given a mere $25 billion. This does not include the $62 billion authorized for Title 17 and $55 billion for ATVM. So with these massive increases in scope and loan authority, in October 2022, then-ranking member Frank Lucas and I sent a letter to DOE highlighting our concern regarding LPO's ability to, quote, manage its programs and make sound investments with federal funds given their past shortcomings and mismanagements, end quote. Despite our concerns, the Biden administration worked quickly to use its expanded authorities in eligible projects. The Government Accountability Office, GAO, released a report in February highlighting that LPO closed almost $25 billion in loan guarantees in the last quarter of 2024 alone. That is a rapid increase to the point GAO stated in its report, quote, "It is uncertain whether LPO can still ensure it has the capacity and expertise to effectively monitor these loans and guarantees." You can't make this stuff up. Now, almost 3 years later, the concerns highlighted in our original letter were clearly well-founded. Today, I hope we can engage in a productive conversation about the merits and programs that this program has historically demonstrated, and hopefully our vision will go where it should be moving forward. I thank our esteemed panel of witnesses for their being here today and look forward to their testimony. With that, I yield back the balance of my time, and I now recognize the ranking member representing from North Carolina for her opening statement.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Chairman Weber, for convening this hearing today to discuss the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office, and frankly, its impressive return on investment for our taxpayers. I also want to thank our witnesses for being here to share their testimony and insights on this topic. Our nation's energy industry and ecosystem are at an inflection point. On one side of the equation, we have energy demand growth predicted to be at levels that we have not seen in decades, thanks in part to data centers being built, electrification of cars and homes, and population growth, which would all normally be good signs that our economy continues to grow. However, we're also seeing real challenges on the other side of the equation. Our nation is facing a multitude of supply-side headwinds. Our electrical grid is reaching capacity and requires significant upgrades. Extreme weather events, which my state of North Carolina is no stranger to, continue to strain current power sources. New energy capacity, including natural gas, is taking several years to come online, and I know we're going to hear a little bit about nuclear today. And now, both high interest rates and new tariffs threaten to increase the cost of supplies for building new power generation. If we do not focus on addressing these challenges right now, they will be passed down as higher energy prices that Americans will be burdened with. During my time on the committee, we've had the opportunity to hear about some exciting new emerging technologies like advanced nuclear, fusion, grid-scale energy storage, and artificial intelligence grid systems that, if widely deployed, would make our electric grid cleaner, more reliable, and more resilient, and of course, get more power. Yet private capital's unwillingness to fund risky emerging technologies or capital-intensive infrastructure projects like new nuclear plants that won't see investment returns for years has been a major obstacle and has left us in a situation that is untenable. And here is where the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office comes in. Congress, under Republican president and a Republican majority in both the House and Senate, set up this loan guarantee authority to take some risk and tackle two main issues. One, help innovative technologies cross the valley of death between the lab and full-scale commercialization, and fund badly needed large-scale utility-led infrastructure projects that help put more clean power on the grid. And again, we'll be hearing about that today from the state of Georgia. And this loan guarantee program's performance and track record have actually exceeded expectations. That does not mean that there haven't been losses, but in the main, it has performed well. The Loan Program Office is one of our best shots at ensuring our energy future isn't riddled with rolling blackouts, over-dependence on outdated and environmentally harmful sources of energy, and unable to handle once-in-a-100-year storms every other year. That said, I'm very concerned about recent reports that staffing at this office has already been dramatically reduced as a result of actions taken by this administration, leaving less than 100 employees to manage a portfolio of up to $500 billion. This will severely hamstring the effectiveness of this office going forward and just lead to higher energy prices for American ratepayers and our consumers. I look forward to discussing this matter with all of our witnesses, and thank you, Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Ross. I now recognize the Chairman of the full committee, Dr. Babin, for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, witnesses, for being here. We really appreciate it. I want to thank all of you folks. Today we'll be discussing and evaluating the DOE Loan Guarantee Program. And while the program plays an important role in helping companies commercialize emerging energy technologies, It must avoid duplicating efforts that the private sector can already deliver. This hearing will also provide an opportunity to review how the previous administration directed taxpayer dollars toward massive green energy initiatives. Since the Department of Energy's loan guarantee program was established, more than $137 billion in taxpayer dollars have been used to support a portfolio of over 90 projects. Too often, loan guarantees are handed out based on political favoritism instead of merit. I'm also very concerned about the $3 billion loan guarantee that DOE provided in 2023 to the solar company Sonova Energy, that's now at risk of bankruptcy and becoming a Solyndra 2.0. Rigorous oversight should be expected when billions of taxpayer dollars are at stake, especially when politics can influence how these dollars are spent. This committee, along with the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, has held numerous hearings over the years highlighting concerns with the program. In addition to congressional oversight, the DOE Inspector General and the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office have repeatedly flagged concerns about mismanagement and lack of accountability within this loan program. In December, the DOE Inspector General's office expressed concerns about the DOE Loan Program Office's handling of potential conflicts of interest. As part of Congress's oversight mandate, we have a responsibility to ensure that the proper transparency is in place to protect taxpayer dollars from unnecessary risk. The loss of taxpayer dollars through the DOE loan program raises serious questions about its overall effectiveness and what actions that Congress must take to better safeguard taxpayer funds. We cannot keep putting American tax dollars on the line when loan guarantee recipients are in danger of default. Nor can we assume the federal government is better equipped than the private sector to determine which technologies will succeed in the commercial market. Picking in winners and losers is not healthy. Today's hearing will examine the future of the DOE loan guarantee program, how it can and should be improved. Is the risk to taxpayers worth the benefits gained? Are taxpayers truly seeing a return from the loan program office? Is the program fulfilling its intended purpose of bridging the gap between innovative technologies, private investment, or is the federal intervention crowding out other innovation in the energy marketplace? These are critical questions that deserve the kind of insightful discussion that I hope that we will have today. It is Congress's duty to ensure careful management of the federal resources and determine the very best path forward for the DOE loan program. We're very fortunate to have a strong panel of witnesses today here to help the committee answer some of these important questions and offer recommendations for the future of the DOE loan guarantee program. I want to thank each of you for joining us today, and I look forward to your testimony. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Babin. I now recognize Ranking Member Lofgren of the full committee for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here today to discuss the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office and really the unique role that its programs play in our energy innovation pipeline. They provide both direct loans and loan guarantees for projects across a broad range of energy sectors, including nuclear, carbon capture and management, renewables, transmission, energy storage, hydrogen, advanced vehicles, and energy-relevant critical materials and supply chains. This support is important because private lenders are often unwilling or unable to take on the risks associated with financing truly innovative, first-of-kind projects on this scale on their own. These programs have been instrumental in establishing new, American-made, clean energy industries. For example, I know we'll hear more from Mr. Haygood. The loan guarantee program supported construction of the first new nuclear reactors in 30 years at Vogtle plant in Georgia, and is now supporting the revival of the Palisades plant in Michigan. Last year, DOE issued a loan guarantee for a project that will help detect harmful and costly methane leaks from our oil and gas infrastructure in 8 states, including California, Texas, Pennsylvania, and North Dakota. And I also have to note that Elon Musk's Tesla received $465 million in loans in 2010, and that played a crucial role in the company's rise as a global leader in electric vehicles until Mr. Musk trashed his brand. The record is now abundantly clear that DOE has been carrying out these programs in a fiscally responsible manner. Even initial critics now view the loan guarantee program as a success, with losses equaling only 3% of the office's entire portfolio. That's a rate that's lower than most venture capitalists achieve. And the interest provided by these loans to the U.S. Treasury is now more than 5 times greater than those losses. So on top of everything else, these programs are a moneymaker for American taxpayers. While there, I'm sure, will be instances where an individual project does not meet its goal, LPO's overall portfolio has been strong and healthy. I do believe, as the chairman has said, we need to have oversight of this program, but I'm also deeply concerned about reports that due to the sweeping actions of this administration across the federal government, the staff for LPO will now be reduced by as much as 60%. And that's before expected reductions in force actions may cut it even more. Now, this office oversees roughly $100 billion in next-generation clean energy projects, and they'd been doing it remarkably well with their previous staffing levels. I haven't seen any evidence that there was an analysis of the office's performance that would somehow improve through firing half of the staff. So I hope that we can dig into that issue this morning. With that, Mr. Chairman, much as I agree that Congress has an important role to play in oversight, the staff of the department has the essential role in managing these loans and overseeing the program. I'm very concerned that these indiscriminate DOJ-delivered firings are going to be injurious to the American taxpayer. And with that, I thank the witnesses for being here, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I'm going to introduce our witnesses today. Our first witness today is Dr. Ryan Yonk, Senior Research Fellow and Director of Education at the American Institute for Economic Research. Welcome, Dr. Yonk. Our next witness is Mr. John Haygood, Assistant Treasurer at Southern Company. Welcome, Mr. Haygood. Our final witness is the Honorable Sam Walsh, former General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Energy. Welcome, Mr. Walsh. I now recognize Dr. Yonk for 5 minutes to present his testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Ross. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in an oversight hearing like this, in large part because programs like the LPO must have the review of Congress periodically to evaluate not just their importance, but also their effectiveness and whether they remain a reasonable policy instrument to attempt to achieve its goals. However, since its creation in 2005, the Title 17 Loan Guarantee Program has largely failed to meet its objectives and instead has become a political tool that exposes taxpayers' money to unnecessary risk, all while diverting capital from alternative energy investments that might otherwise be made in the private market. Government-backed loans distort markets, misallocate funds, and fail to promote welfare-enhancing innovations in the sectors where they are applied. When we think about federal loan guarantees or direct lending, they serve a public benefit only when they accomplish what economists call additionality, meaning the program must be offering loans to projects that would not otherwise have garnered funding in the open market. If they fail to do so, they are simply adding unnecessary transaction costs and putting taxpayers' money at risk. Exploratory research on the additionality of LPO's programs reveals relatively poor additionality and an opportunity for far better oversight in that regard. Although it may seem commendable for the government to help fund energy companies in a desire to produce more and cheaper energy, unintended consequences abound of these activities and go undetected among those that are spellbound by the rhetoric that both surrounds alternative energy as well as greater and cheaper production. The decision to pick winners and losers through government programs in the quest to correct perceived market failures and jumpstart industries has failed to promote innovation and has most likely done the opposite. And here I will share a short story from a company I met with while conducting a DOE-funded research project on alternative energy, where we met with founder of a small wave generation company. And as we chatted with him, he explained really two major concerns that he had. The first was that he had trouble getting access in the private market system. Absolutely. It was a major concern of his. And then he turned to questions about whether or not things like the LPO would be willing to help. And he pointed out that given where he was located and the sort of industry he was in, he was not able to engage those programs effectively. And so in the end, we arrived at the same result in the private market and in LPO, albeit for different reasons. And at the root of this is the reality that any program where government picks winners and losers, we end up with the opportunity for them to fall prey to rent seekers, political agendas, and moral hazards. Instead, using private markets where lenders seek borrowers who will pay them back by providing innovative and profitable products and services that consumers value leads us to both innovation and success. When both parties want to benefit from these arrangements, and as a result, both lenders and borrowers try to avoid activities which are too risky because they will ultimately bear the cost. And instead, their focus is on mutually beneficial actions that they can agree have the potential for return. As a result, in lieu of LPO's programs, the government, this committee, and others would do better to simply step out of the way and let entrepreneurs and the market develop the necessary technology for better energy production. And as the current Department of Energy head Chris Wright said, it is in part of his interview with the Daily Caller last month, the first and primary tool is private capital and private business. Most of these things with a reasonable business climate will happen in the marketplace. And with that, the reasonable marketplace means stepping out of the way and allowing these markets to develop in detail and allowing them to innovate without picking winners and losers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would now recognize Mr. Haygood for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Committee Chairman Babin, Committee Ranking Member Lofgren, Subcommittee Chairman Weber, Subcommittee Ranking Member Ross, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm John Haygood, Head of Treasury of Southern Company and our subsidiaries, and it's my distinct honor to sit before you. Today, I'll discuss the critical role of the Department of Energy's Loan Program Office in advancing our nation's energy objectives. Specifically, I will highlight the importance of continuing this program to advance the administration's goals of energy dominance, continued leadership in artificial intelligence, and lower energy bills for all Americans. Southern Company is one of the nation's leading energy companies. We have 3 state-regulated electric utilities across Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, 4 state-regulated gas distribution companies across Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, and Illinois, a competitive wholesale power generation company, a nuclear company, a distributed energy company, and a telecommunications company. Altogether, Southern Company subsidiaries are privileged to serve the energy needs of over 9 million customers and employ over 28,000 people who work every day to make sure that the lights are on and the gas is flowing. The Southeast, where Southern Company's electric utilities operate, is experiencing unprecedented growth, particularly in large load manufacturing customers and AI-driven data center demand. Atlanta has become the #1 market for data center development, with 40% of the U.S. market share for planned data centers located in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. This growth necessitates a robust and diverse energy portfolio and new energy infrastructure to ensure clean, safe, reliable, and affordable power. A prime example of the DOE loan program's success is the loans for Plant Vogtle Units 3 and 4. These loans were instrumental in securing low-cost financing for the nation's first new nuclear plants in over 30 years. They helped mitigate capital markets risk, saved our customers over $500 million, and contributed to America's energy security. The construction of Vogtle Units 3 and 4 proved to be quite challenging as it faced multiple unforeseen events, including the bankruptcy of our prime contractor and impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. The DOE loans provided the necessary financial backing to navigate these challenges, ensure that this country could bring new nuclear units online, which is perhaps more relevant now than ever before, as this nation is seeing such significant demand growth. The DOE loan program can be a cornerstone of the strategy to meet the administration's objectives. By supporting infrastructure projects that enhance grid reliability and expand American energy capabilities, we can ensure the United States remains a leader in artificial intelligence and energy innovation. The Southern Company system is currently advancing several projects with wide-ranging benefits across a broad portfolio of assets, including natural gas infrastructure updates, hydro, solar, battery energy storage, nuclear, and electric grid investments. These projects enhance operational efficiency, extend the life of critical assets, and create high-quality jobs, supporting economic growth and stability. DOE loans are a powerful tool to drive energy infrastructure and innovation. I urge the subcommittee to support the continuation and enhancement of this program, ensuring it remains a cornerstone of our nation's energy strategy. Together, we can meet the challenges of today and secure a prosperous energy future for generations to come. Again, thank you for this opportunity, your time, and consideration of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Haygood. Mr. Walsh, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Weber, Ranking Member Ross, members of the subcommittee, my name is Sam Walsh, and I'm pleased to share my perspectives on DOE's Loan Guarantee Program, a program that I observe closely as DOE General Counsel. I'm testifying today solely in my individual capacity. Our country has some of the best scientists and engineers in the world, yet time and again we see technologies invented in the U.S. and commercialized abroad. This is especially clear in energy and transportation sectors, where we've seen China take a leading position in the manufacturing and follow-on innovation of solar PV, batteries, including critical minerals, and now electric vehicles. We also face an energy affordability crisis. In 2022, Congress expanded DOE's authority by adding the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment, or 1706 program. That program authorized LPO to finance projects that replace energy infrastructure that has retired. The 1706 program achieves two critical objectives. It enables utilities to make needed investments with a lower cost of capital and therefore with a lower impact on rates. And it directs those investments to the areas that have lost economic activity due to infrastructure retirement. DOE's Loan Guarantee Program is one of the few tools we have to address these challenges, and it's not one we can afford to lose. Congress created the program to confront what's sometimes called the Valley of Death, a name for the financing challenge companies face when they try to grow new technologies from pilot to commercial scale. Banks often lack willingness to provide debt financing for first-of-a-kind projects, especially if they lack the technical expertise to evaluate technology risks. Over this valley of death, LPO offers what it calls a bridge to bankability. Successful applicants receive access to debt financing that is patient, customized to their project, and comparatively low cost. The pattern we see is that once one or two projects have succeeded, future projects of that kind no longer need the program and can rely on commercial financing. The program comes with strong protections. Before LPO can issue a loan, the Secretary must determine that there exists a reasonable prospect of repayment. To carry out that obligation, LPO has built a review process that is at least as demanding and perhaps more demanding than those of commercial lenders. LPO's due diligence process includes a thorough assessment conducted by LPO staff, by technical experts from other offices within DOE and from the national labs, and by external consultants and outside counsel from top law firms, all of whom are selected by LPO but paid for by the applicant. The title of this hearing is Risky Business, but of course all finance involves risk. The question is not whether we're taking risks, but whether we're taking smart risks and whether we're getting an adequate return. So let's look at the record of this program with that in mind. How much financial risk has been imposed on U.S. taxpayers, and what have we gotten in return? Well, so far, LPO has issued loans and guarantees totaling $69 billion, of which $40.5 billion has been dispersed. Program losses have totaled $1.03 billion as compared to $5.6 billion in interest payments received. This means the program is in the black. In other words, despite the fact that it has funded innovative technologies, the program has achieved a positive rate of return for U.S. taxpayers. On the other side of the ledger, what sort of return have we gotten for our investment? The answer is that the program has empowered dozens of U.S. companies to scale their production, to become leaders in their industries, and to create over 47,000 permanent jobs. When we look at the data, we see a program whose benefits vastly exceed its costs. Now, when new administrations come to office, they may have new priorities. Secretary Wright says he wants to focus on nuclear, geothermal, and transmission, among other things. These are important goals that LPO can advance. I'll highlight just one, nuclear energy. As we know, LPO financed the first 2 nuclear reactors built in this country in nearly 30 years. It's also now financing the first restart of a retired reactor in our country's history. And as we look to the future, we see a new crop of American companies looking to build advanced reactors. LPO is ideally suited to work with these companies, and indeed, many are already in LPO's pipeline. With its access to experts in DOE's Office of Nuclear Energy and the national labs, LPO can conduct a diligence process that evaluates and mitigates technology risks for advanced nuclear in a way that no commercial bank could match. And for projects that make it through, LPO can offer patient and customized debt financing that sets them up for success. As I said earlier, LPO is not a tool that our nation can afford to lose. The risky business we're engaged in now is that we might. This is a program that runs on its people. It's finance professionals, engineers, lawyers, etc., and yet there are reports that LPO staff have been encouraged to resign and that half of them have opted to leave so far. To issue new loans, let alone manage its existing portfolio, LPO needs to continue to be funded and it needs to retain its professional staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. As I noted in my opening statement today, DOE's Loan Program Office looks much different from when I last chaired a hearing in Risky Business Part 1 on the same subject in 2017. Some might say it has significantly improved, and despite what you may have heard, this is thanks to the Trump administration. For example, in the Energy Act of 2020, President Trump signed robust reforms to LPO that added guardrails on the specific terms and conditions of loan guarantees in the Title 17 program. He also took the necessary steps to refocus LPO on activities essential for American energy dominance. His executive orders, like Executive Order 13817, expanded LPO's Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program to support onshoring supply chains, specifically for critical minerals. These actions were later authorized in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So, Mr. Haygood, my first question is for you. You drew the short straw. Over the last 5 years, as DOE has implemented the Trump administration's reforms, how have you seen your organization's engagement with LPO change?
First of all, thank you for your question, Chairman Weber. I will note that Southern Power Company, one of Southern Company's subsidiaries, has renewable facilities in Texas of over 1,900 megawatts. And
we appreciate that.
To address your question, sir, Southern Company has been involved with the Loan Program Office back to the Bush administration. Back in 2008, we applied for our first loans for Plant Vogtle. We closed on our loans under the Obama administration, have continued to work through the loans with the first Trump administration, and now the Biden administration. And you know, each part of the loans we've seen as new administrations come in, they rightfully evaluate the program and put their own color on the program. And so, you know, from our perspective, we have had very constructive conversations all throughout the process, and the new 1706 loans have given us additional interest to meet our significant investment needs to serve the unprecedented demand growth that we're currently seeing, and all to the benefit of our customers.
So were you there in 2008?
I was.
Neither one of us had gray hair back then. I know. So what additional improvements would you like to see in this office to better serve the national interest and protect taxpayers?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The first element is really around Davis-Bacon Act. And, you know, we have great relationships with our labor unions. They were very instrumental in bringing Plant Vogtle online. We have no problem paying prevailing wages. What is a challenge is we pay biweekly. Our collective bargaining agreements contemplate biweekly pay, and moving to weekly pay is extremely administratively burdensome for utilities, very costly, and all that cost goes back to our customers or eats into the benefits of the loan. So that would be the biggest low-hanging fruit that would
Okay.
help move through the process.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Walsh, I'm coming to you. In your testimony, you discussed how Title 17 was aimed at the valley of death, addressing the lack of banks willing to provide debt finance to the what's called a first-of-a-kind projects. However, we have seen these loans repeatedly provided to some of the largest companies in the world, including the likes of NextEra Energy, NRG Energy, and Goldman Sachs via their wholly owned subsidiary Cogentrex. So my question for you is, why should the government provide loans to these multi-billion with a B dollar companies that could more than likely have easily raised the funds themselves if they thought the venture was viable?
Thank you, Chairman Weber, for the question. I think even big companies will face financing challenges when it comes to first-of-a-kind technologies. First-of-a-kind technologies face schedule risk, cost risk, regulatory risk in some cases, and very often these companies, like if you're say an electric utility, you don't really have much of an incentive to be the first one to deploy a new technology. You'd rather be the second, and you'd rather be the third than the second, right? So, but there's a benefit to the entire market when someone takes that first step. And so that's part of what this program can offer. It kind of provides an inducement for even large companies that want to take a leadership role in a particular industry.
And I'm a little bit past my time, but I want to very quickly make this observation. With those kind of multi-billion-dollar companies, isn't it safe to say that they're not risking their own capital, they're risking taxpayers' capital?
Well, no, that's not right. I mean, there's always a very substantial equity contribution to any one of these projects, right? Even by law, DOE cannot finance more than 80% of the project cost of any particular project. And in fact, it rarely even approaches that level. So you would often see, when big companies are involved, you'd often see substantial equity. You might see parent guarantees and things like that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm now going to yield to Ms. Ross and for her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Haygood, I'm also going to start with you as somebody from the Southeast who has been watching nuclear. North Carolina has nuclear. South Carolina had a very bad experience with the Santee Cooper plant. And in general, I'm not a big fan of construction work in progress projects where the ongoing cost to build is passed down to the ratepayers and along with the risk. I think that they force the ratepayers to absorb the project risk without incentive or in an efficient manner. Does Southern Company use construction work in progress? And did you use it on the Vogtle plants?
So first of all, thank you for your question, and I'll note that our Southern Power entity also has 2 natural gas and 2 solar facilities in North Carolina.
Thank you.
Totaling over 1,750 megawatts. So to your question, recovery of financing cost during construction, especially long life construction like a new nuclear plant, is very important to mitigate credit risk and provide credit support. And it is not recovery of any hard assets. It's truly just recovering of the financing cost. And yes, we did have CWIP and rates for Plant Vogtle construction.
So when you do use construction work in progress, can the DOE loan guarantees be used to minimize some of the ratepayer costs in that situation?
That's correct. All of those benefits go back to customers.
Great. That's why I like the DOE loan program for this. I just want to make it clear, if you take advantage of the DOE loan guarantees as you did with the Vogel plants, there's a triple benefit. Less cost passed down to the ratepayers for the projects under construction. The American taxpayers see a return on their investment in the form of the interest payments that you pay back for the DOE loan program. And we, as a nation, can move forward on building badly needed critical energy infrastructure. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't say it any better.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Walsh, turning to you now. I've been very clear before that I'm concerned that the reports of DOGE's access to systems at DOE and now their involvement in the encouragement of DOE employees to take an offer to voluntarily resign, regardless of the impacts of the staff departures, are going to really decimate the agency. I've seen recent reports that LPO will likely be losing around 60% of the staff due to the latest round of resignations. Do you believe that DOGE is in any way qualified to understand the massive loss of this expertise at the LPO?
Well, I think that, if these reports are accurate and if this, number of staff leaves, it will be cause serious harm to the ability of the program to fulfill the goals, the bipartisan goals that I think that everyone here has expressed a desire to see it fulfill. You have a very talented team of engineers, finance professionals, lawyers, many of whom have come to from the private sector, right? And for those folks to be told, hey, we want you to quit. We don't care, how good you are at your job. We don't care, what you've accomplished in your career. We just want you to quit. It's going to be very hard to get those folks back, right? And so moreover, we're talking about 50, 60% across the entire office, but that's simply the number of folks who have chosen to resign, right? Like they could be coming from any part of the office. You could have some specialties or functions within the office that sees resignations greater than 60%, in which case you'll have some serious bottlenecks and performance problems.
And so, DOGE, the E is supposed to be efficiency. Are we seeing any efficiency from this cut?
Well, I would not expect it. So, if you, as of January, you had a headcount in LPO of maybe 250, something like that. If the reports are right, that number could get down to say 100, right, or below. If you take if you remove 150 of those federal employees, you might save $30 million a year, probably less. Meanwhile, you've severely degraded your ability to manage a portfolio of $25 billion of outstanding principal and growing. You've severely degraded your ability to process loans that are, drawing right now, and you've severely degraded your ability to underwrite and make new loans. So it doesn't seem like a good trade-off, is what I'm trying to say.
Not very efficient. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit a letter from a coalition of stakeholders in support of the LPO.
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina for 5 minutes, or
Good morning.
however much you need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here for this hearing today. So South Carolina and our entire nation, we're approaching a point of energy, I guess almost a critical point. Our demands continue to grow faster than our energy generation. So the DOE Loan Guarantee Program has had mixed successes in securing our energy dominance, and we know how important that is for our nation. So while there have been some notable successes, there have been many high-profile failures and defaults and project terminations, especially in the green energy space. America needs an all-of-the-above strategy, not market manipulation that picks winners and losers based on political agendas. So my question is to Mr. Haygood. How did the Vogel plants achieve success through the DOE loan programs And what set this project apart from many of the others that had less success?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Biggs, for your question. So, as we began Plant Vogel, we recognized there were several risks ahead of us. We were one of the first new nuclear units to have to establish supply chains in over 20 years. We had capital markets risk, obviously construction risk. And so, and as we moved through the process, we actually recognized some of those risks. Fukushima happened, which delayed the licensing process. Our prime contractor declared bankruptcy, and our subsidiary, Southern Nuclear, had to take over construction. And then we had to navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. And so having the loan program, the ability to access capital at a fixed credit spread was very beneficial to our customers, ultimately saving them over $500 million through the program.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm going to offer this question. I'd really like to hear all three of your perspectives. How can the DOE loan guarantee programs be streamlined to increase energy generation and unleash American energy without picking winners and losers in the market? And I would like to, we'll start on this end.
Thank you, Representative Biggs. So, as I said in my testimony, one of the key issues that emerges when you pick winners and losers is that you've selected one over the other rather than in response to market forces and those things. And part of the issues that we've heard about today is regulatory uncertainty and regulatory overreach in many cases makes it more expensive for new technologies to enter. And so one of the things I would suggest to the subcommittee is that as you think about the LPO program, you're also thinking about the regulatory side. Because in many instances, the reason why capital is more difficult for new technologies, or what we might call riskier technologies, to enter the market is because the regulatory uncertainty makes lenders and investors less willing to take the chance. And so without reforms on both sides, you're not likely to get a real clear market signal.
Thank you. Mr. Haygood.
So LPO loans can provide loans to fund money for many forms of energy infrastructure, and many forms of infrastructure will be needed to serve the incredible growth we're experiencing and ultimately meet the President's energy dominance agenda.
Thank you.
Well, you know, we've been hearing this talking point about picking winners and losers for about 15 years, and there have been a lot of hearings like this, and I've never heard any testimony from any losers, and that's because
You hadn't been paying attention.
well, when LPO finances a new technology, it's not just the company that gets the funding that benefits. What it does is de-risk the entire technology area, the entire sector. So let's say utility scale solar. The first utility scale solar plants in this country were financed through LPO. You know, those companies benefited, but the entire sector benefited, right? Now, other companies that want to build utility scale solar can go to commercial banks. They have supply chains available. There are dozens of companies competing in that space now. No one even remembers the ones that got the first couple loans. Let's think ahead to advanced nuclear, right? Let's say LPO finances a couple advanced nuclear plants. That's going to help the entire sector. It's going to help commercial banks realize that these projects are worth financing. It's going to help build out workforce. It's going to help build out supply chains. For advanced nuclear, you have a particular supply chain issue, which is the provision of fuel, high assay, low enriched uranium. You need a critical mass of reactors that are actually out there using it, creating demand. So I think that the bigger risk is that we kind of hold back, right? I think that we should be pushing forward with this program. It's going to, it has a lot of, a lot of potential across a lot of areas, including the ability to meet the low growth challenges that you referenced.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I yield back, sir.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Zoe Lofgren, for at least 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and this is an important hearing. You know, I hear winners and losers, but actually, if you take a look at it, we've been picking winners because the return of 5.1% interest is considerably higher than the losses. And the taxpayers are making money on this, but even more importantly, as you've just mentioned, Mr. Walsh, being the first is hard to get the funding. But once you've proven that you can be successful, then you can go to the commercial market. And we've seen that in a variety of energy areas. I just want to ask, I know that the ranking member addressed this, but in terms of the staff reductions, I'd like you, if you can, Mr. Haywood or Mr. Walsh, to compare the finalized loans totaling close to $500 billion being managed at a staff level of less than 100 employees, and it may go down from there. How does that compare to what a commercial lending institution would have by staffing to oversee a similar portfolio? Is it scant?
Well, first of all, the total authority that the program has across all programs might be $500 billion, but that's not actually what's outstanding. I just want to
Right.
speak to that. Right, we have $69 billion of closed loans and guarantees, and I think it's something like $40.5 billion dispersed. So what I was trying to say before, I don't, I can't sit here and say what the exact right number of personnel in the office should be, but given the amount of money that's being managed, there was a reference earlier to concerns about having enough staffing to monitor the existing portfolio. It's kind of penny wise, pound foolish to be trying to save money on the salaries of federal employees when you have that much money that
Right.
needs to be monitored and handled appropriately.
That's common sense. Let me ask you, Mr. Haygood, your testimony is very interesting. Thank you for the innovative things you've done. I understand that Southern is an affiliate member of the Fusion Industry Association, which is something that many of us on a bipartisan basis here in Congress are very interested in and supportive of. Can you tell us anything about your company's interest in fusion and any activities in this area that you've been engaged in to date?
Yes, thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. And I also have to note that our Southern Power subsidiary has 14 solar and battery facilities in California, totaling over 1,450 megawatts.
Thank you.
So we have a proprietary research and development team. They have an objective to determine the value proposition of fusion technology. Currently, the main activity is technology scouting via EPRI Fusion Forum, Fusion Industry Association, or FIA, and direct engagement with fusion developers. Participation in the FIA allows us to easily access many of the stakeholders in the fusion community and maintain awareness of policy and regulatory decisions affecting fusion deployment.
One of the things, thinking about fusion, there is a lot of venture capital money in the fusion space, actually more than the federal government is spending on fusion at this point, if you discount the national, the weapons program. But at some point, once ignition is achieved, they're going to be in the same spot as you were with the first, advanced nuclear thing, and they're going to need to be able to develop this stuff. Have you, I don't know if you've had discussions with the Fusion Industry Association or that, whether your company might be in a position to bring that to online, or whether that's premature. Some of these venture-funded companies are predicting that they will be able to produce to the grid in 2028, 2029 timeframe. I don't know if that's too arcane to ask you, Mr. Haygood, but it's an important issue for the committee.
Yeah, most of our objectives are to make sure we understand different technologies and to stay engaged. We believe there's going to be a broad solution of technologies that are needed in the future, and we want to have a good understanding of all of them.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Chairman, my time is expired.
Thank the gentlelady. The representative from Oregon is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Weber and Ranking Member Ross, and to our witnesses today for being here. In Oregon, one of our major utilities, PacifiCorp, has a conditional commitment from LPO to support several major transmission projects right now. And like many states, we face the challenge of substantial load growth far from new generation opportunities, making transmission a key element of the clean energy equation. In our case, the load growth is concentrated in the Willamette Valley, including right in my district, whereas the development opportunities for clean energy are largely on the other side of the mountains out in eastern Oregon. Mr. Haygood, you mentioned that Southern Company is taking advantage of LPO financing to upgrade and expand transmission on the grid. Can you expand on the work that you're doing, particularly in terms of how these grid investments facilitate adding more clean energy into the mix and thereby potentially reducing rates overall for customers?
Sure, and thank you for your question. So similar to your state, Georgia, most of the plentiful land and solar facilities are locating in South Georgia versus the big load centers are in the Atlanta area. And so therefore, you have a need for new transmission to effectively move the energy. We also have some reconductoring work, making our transmission lines more efficient and reducing line losses. And all of those, if you think about our overall portfolio of transmission and other investments, the DOE loans absolutely help reduce that cost and goes directly back to customers.
Great, thank you. I noted that our projects in Oregon still only have a conditional commitment, and we've seen reporting the Trump administration may try to backtrack on some of these conditional commitments. Mr. Haygood, speaking from your own experience, what would happen to projects if LPO financing failed to materialize when the company may be expecting or on their, on the road to finalizing an agreement? Would there be other ways to finance that work, and how would that ultimately affect ratepayers?
So there could be other ways to finance it. It will be more expensive. We're kind of at a time when utilities around the country are seeing unprecedented load growth and an unprecedented need to expend capital to build out our infrastructure or improve our infrastructure. And so all of that pressure on the capital markets effectively puts challenges in the ability to raise the capital, and could potentially either we have to delay construction of a project because we can't raise sufficient capital, or at the best, it puts upward pressure on that capital, which all flows back to customers.
Thank you. And yeah, businesses back home, from what I'm hearing, they are having some capital project challenges right now, with interest rates being unstable and the market also being a bit unstable. So I do want to just address for a minute staffing reductions at LPO that threaten the office's ability to actually carry out some of its core functions with, almost 200 active applications, but yet we're hearing about reports of about 60% of LPO's workforce getting pushed out due to pressures from DOGE. I'm very concerned about what this means. So, Mr. Walsh, how would a 60% staff reduction affect LPO's ability to process almost 200 applications, and how would a slowdown in finalized loans affect the amount or pace of revenue that they could actually generate for the taxpayer?
Well, I think it would have a very severe detrimental impact. That's an organization that was, you have a lot of professionals working very hard. If 60% of them, if 60% of people in any organization leaves overnight, you're going to have very serious performance problems. As I mentioned before, it's not as though somebody planned which 60% was going to go. It's the folks who decided to take a deal, so they could be coming from any part of the organization at any particular level of seniority. So I don't think that it is going to. I think it's going to cause performance problems. What will happen to those conditional commitments, I couldn't say, but in all likelihood, those projects will get slowed down in the best case.
Thank you. My time's nearly expired. I yield back.
All right. The chair now recognizes Representative Riley from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. York, some of my colleagues earlier today talked about the importance of scrutinizing conflicts of interest in this program. You agree that's important, correct? And some of my colleagues talked about the importance of demanding transparency in these programs. You agree that's important, correct?
Sure.
You're here representing the American Institute for Economic Research, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the American Institute for Economic Research owns the American Investment Services, is that correct?
That is a wholly owned subsidiary, yes.
Yeah. Wholly owned subsidiary, meaning that it fully owns it.
Yes.
And American Investment Services holds millions of dollars in stock from Chevron and Exxon, is that correct?
I have no specific knowledge about their holdings. I work on the research and education side of the house, not in the investment side.
You don't know one way or the other whether the entity that you're here representing owns a subsidiary that owns stock in Exxon and Chevron? That's your testimony? You're not aware of that?
I do not know.
Mr.
what-
Chairman, without objection, I'd like to enter into the record the stock holdings of the American Investment Services, which shows that they own millions of dollars in stock of Chevron and Exxon.
Mr. Chairman, may I be allowed to answer his question?
No, this is my time, and somebody else could give you that opportunity. Would you be willing to provide for this committee a list of all of the funders of American Institute for Economic Research?
Those are not decisions that I make. I work as a researcher at the Institute. We are funded by a variety of sources, including individuals and foundations.
In the interest of transparency and examining conflicts of interest, I'd appreciate it if you would come back to us and let us know whether you would make that disclosures. You wrote in your testimony on page 7 that historically most of the loans guaranteed by the LPO have subsidized lower risk power plants. That's actually not accurate though, is it?
I believe it is accurate.
On what basis?
The basis of the analysis done and through my own research.
Well, is your basis for saying that most of the loans are guaranteed by the LPO the study that you cited in your testimony?
The study I cited, as well as my own work from the earlier renditions where I've specifically looked at loans issued by the LPO.
How many loans has LPO issued?
At this time, I do not have that immediately in front of me, Mr. Riley.
Okay. What you say most of the loans guaranteed by LPO have subsidized lower risk power plants. What's the percentage?
Again, I do not have that information in front of me.
It would have been helpful, would it not have been, for you to have cited your basis for making that statement in your written testimony?
I could certainly provide you that information.
Yeah, please do, because the one study that you did cite in your testimony is over 12 years old. Sure. Correct? And that study actually, when was the last time you looked at that study, the Dr. Ruji study that you rely on in your testimony?
I reviewed it immediately prior to writing this testimony.
When did you write the testimony?
I wrote the testimony about four days ago.
Okay. So were you aware when you reviewed that study that it actually has nothing to do with Section 1703 programs?
It has to do with loans in general, dealing with federal loans.
Right, just generally federal loans, but not specifically the programs that we're
is-
talking about here today,
that is
correct?
correct.
Right. LPO's portfolio is available online. You understand that,
Yeah, of
correct?
course.
And when was the last time you looked at the portfolio?
I skimmed through the portfolio about a week ago.
About a week ago. I looked at it this morning. Did you go through and look at how many of the programs under the portfolio are actually low-risk power plants?
I looked through it, and I would have to do a more detailed review. I was
Okay.
asked to testify relatively recently, and I've done a significant amount of work, particularly on the green energy side of things. And I have concerns not just about green
Is the
energy, but
reason
all energy loans.
What I'm trying to get is you're here telling us that most of the projects funded under this program are one thing, but it looks like you don't actually you've not provided any data showing that that's right. Most of the data actually show that it's not right. I'd like to enter into the record also unanimous consent, the actual portfolio, so people can see for themselves that the witness's testimony is not accurate in that regard.
Without objection.
You wrote that, and you said again today that some exploratory research on additionality of loan guarantee programs for energy technologies from both DOE and USDA reveals poor additionality. In fact, however, there's no evidence showing that Section 1703 is financing projects that would have been financed anyway, correct?
The evidence suggests that additionality is not significant under these programs in general.
No, not talking about in general. Talking about the specific program that we're here to talk about today, Section 1703. Is your testimony that there is evidence showing that Section 1703 is funding projects that would not have been funded otherwise? Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that federal loans, in order for them to serve a public benefit, requires evidence of additionality, and additional research must be done on these specific programs.
So that's very different to say additional research must be done than to say what you just told this committee, which is that the research shows that there's no additionality. So are you revising your testimony to
I
say
am
you don't
not
know one way or the other under Section
Preliminary research
1703?
indicates poor additionality. Additional research is necessary.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just one last thing. If the additional research that you are referring to is what you cited in your testimony. I would note that the one thing you cited in your testimony for that proposition is a draft study that was never published. It's over 10 years old, and it looks at only 2 Section 1703 projects. I think the next time you come here and ask us to dismantle a program that's saving the planet for my kids and creating jobs, you should provide us some accurate facts about it.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Representative Baird, believing that he's ready. Representative Baird, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Appreciate all of our witnesses being here today. Dr. Yonk, do you have any, regard to the last questioning, do you have any rebuttal to that? Or
Yes,
I'm going to give
I
you
have-
floor time to.
I appreciate that. Yes, the expectation that a senior research fellow within an organization that has a wholly owned subsidiary that is operated separately would have knowledge of how that operates is an unrealistic expectation, and one that would in fact be counter to our mission at AIER of conducting independent research and then communicating that research to the general public. And so I have nothing to do with the operations of that subsidiary and have no knowledge of what it invests in beyond my own 401k that is all invested in long-run funds. The second is, while Mr. Riley raises lots of sort of angry points about old studies, he actually highlights a very important problem. And namely, that is additional research on these loan programs is necessary if we are in fact going to answer the questions about whether or not many of the claims that have been made about their incredible opportunity and how much they've done can actually be answered conclusively. In reviewing the literature on these loans, part of what became clear is that additional studies are necessary, and yet at the same time we find preliminary evidence that additionality is poor. And so rather than it being a wholesale attempt to dismantle a program, I believe in fact what needs to happen is that additional research has to be engaged in order for these things to actually be evaluated effectively.
That's a good point. And you know, that leads me to my next question, which goes to you again, Dr. Yon and Mr. Walsh. But anyway, as a researcher, I know it's very difficult sometimes to find and conduct basic research because you're not sure how that's going to turn out. And so the risk is there. I guess I'm just asking, what are some of the reasons that you think that promising technology might not receive private funding? And it is often because of the true market failure. Is it because of the true market failure? Or is this more the market doing its job and weeding out risky projects? So to the both of you,
Yeah.
Dr. Yonk, you go.
So there are two primary responses I would give to that question. The first is market failures do exist. The question then is the cure to the perceived market failure worse than the actual failure itself? Meaning, if we intervene to try to correct it, what are the unseen things that can happen in that process? And the second is, when we look at attempts to do things like correct market failures, that there's not enough capital in the system, for example, we should ask the question, have other things been induced that created that limitation, including the regulatory side, which I think is one of the primary reasons why capital is reluctant to be the first actor because of the regulatory uncertainty. And so those two things together, I think, would be the primary things I would point to, in addition to many of the technical questions that exist.
I like your response from the standpoint that, you know, when you add the additional risk of regulatory actions, in addition to taking on a risky business, then that precludes people from wanting to invest in that kind of activity. So your point is well taken. So Mr. Walsh, you got any thoughts in that arena?
Sure. I mean, this program aims at debt financing for first-of-a-kind projects. We're talking about 1703 now.
Mr. Walsh, lean towards your mic just a little bit.
Thank you. This program aims at first-of-a-kind innovative technology, right? That's what 1703 does. First-of-a-kind projects often struggle to get debt financing because they have cost risks, schedule risks, they have regulatory risks. And so what this program does is it provides a proof of concept. The first project comes in, if it can get financing, if it can get off the ground and succeed, it opens the door for commercial lending for all the other types of projects that want to use that technology. In the process, it helps to build out your workforce, it helps to build out your supply chain, all the other things, regulatory proof of concept, all the other things that other projects in that category would need.
Mr. Haygood, we've got about 24 seconds, if you can condense it down.
Well, so we've benefited tremendously from the loan programs to help us reduce our financing risk and ultimately bring forth the first new nuclear plants in 3 decades.
Good answer. You did a great job. So I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The chair now recognizes Representative Fushi from North Carolina for at least 5 minutes.
Thank you to the chairman and ranking member for holding this hearing today, and thank you to the witnesses for being here with us today. We find ourselves at a truly historical moment defined by rapid advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, and other breakthroughs in emerging technologies like quantum that are reshaping entire industries and redefining the way we live and work. With the demand surging for compute resources and AI data center infrastructure across the country, it is imperative that Congress and the federal government play its role in making sure that the energy demands of the future are met responsibly. As a member of our inaugural bipartisan AI task force, assessing and understanding AI's rising environmental and energy impacts have been one of my top priorities. Mr. Walsh, you wrote in your testimony about the valley of death facing companies that seek to advance new energy technologies from pilot to commercial scale. As we seek to meet our nation's growing energy needs with the rise of AI, can you speak about how the federal government is taking stock of future potential energy strains on the grid caused by the arrival of new technologies like AI, and how the DOE Loan Program Office has played a role in supporting innovation and development of new technologies and more efficient energy sources across the United States?
Thank you for the question, Representative. One sort of additional positive byproduct from the kind of data center demand is that a lot of these hyperscaler companies are very interested in working with advanced nuclear. Right, we've seen that those projects like that are a very good fit for the scale and the reliability demands that data centers have. So this program, as I was speaking about earlier, is ideally suited to work with these startup companies that are developing new advanced reactors and put them in a position to actually deploy those reactors, the first generation of those new reactors, in time to meet some of this AI data center demand.
Thank you. Duke Energy is the largest energy provider in my home state of North Carolina, not including electric cooperatives. Shortly after the 2024 presidential election, Duke announced that they would be halting their applications to access DOE funds through the Loan Program Office because of the uncertainty surrounding the program with an incoming Trump administration. Mr. Haygood, can you share how a large utility like the Southern Company is having to adapt its long-term strategy for energy development given the current atmosphere surrounding the LPO caused by the administration?
Thank you for your question, Representative Walsh. The Southern Company has worked with the Loan Program Office back to the Bush administration and has worked through several administration changes each time the new administration comes in, and it's their prerogative to look at the program, make changes they see fit, and the company has continued to constructively work with the Loan Program Office through this change and hope to continue to work constructively to bring our loans to fruition.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, as a former general counsel for the Department of Energy, I know that you are keenly aware of the critical role the department plays in spurring federal energy production, research, development, and deployment. Can you talk about the role the LPO has played in advancing these goals and the challenges that might arise if the LPO is no longer able to provide capital investments for these important and much-needed advances in R&D for the American energy industry?
Sure. When companies in the U.S. can't get debt financing to take their new technologies from the pilot scale to commercial scale, they're going to look abroad, right? They're going to look to countries like China, where they might see more opportunities to do that. And what is lost when that happens? What's lost when we see industries like solar PV and batteries go to China? Well, for one thing, it's all the jobs, of course, and the economic activity. But those then become the places where all the follow-on innovation, all the new sort of hands-on learning occurs. They're in a position to then improve those technologies and to kind of dominate them going forward.
Thank you. That's my time, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Riley of New York. I'm going to recognize myself. Staff tells me. Okay. Good to know. You know what they say, behind every successful member of Congress, their staff telling them what to do. So I'm going to go to you, Dr. Yonk. Short of shutting down LPO, how best do you ensure that projects are selected on a merit-based, or as you mentioned in your testimony, a maximum additionality approach instead of what you outlined in your testimony as a political tool that shifts, quite frankly, with every administration?
Yes, the shifting between administrations is one of the major issues that emerges as any of these types of programs, that as the priorities change, suddenly these different sectors within the industry and different companies find themselves on the short end of the sort of political stick. And so one of the major issues is that I think would improve the program would be actual analysis of whether or not the additionality is being achieved by DOE. So a DOE internal study, as well as the opportunity for further studies outside of DOE that examine the additionality and the unseen things that have been foregone as a result of selecting to invest in this set of industries or others. And when we speak of winners and losers, we're not most often speaking about individual companies, but rather we're speaking somewhat more broadly. Namely that we're identifying that now we're going to move towards nuclear and geothermal. Previously, we were moving towards wind and solar or other areas. And so we end up moving not based on market demand or where innovation is occurring, but rather based on the political realities of what it means to actually work in a bureaucracy and in a political system.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine likes to say that a bureaucrat is run by a bunch of mental midgets. I don't know what he means by that. But, and he makes an interesting point, because one of the things I guess I want to follow up with is, shouldn't that tell us something that if the financiers who are closer to the project and the market, by the way, and actually have skin in the name, if they won't do it, why would we think that government bureaucrats could keep up, who are far removed from decisions and the risks, why would we think they would be better suited to make calls? Your thoughts, those kinds of calls, your thoughts?
So in the first place, I've never interacted with a government bureaucrat from DOE or any other agency that I would classify as a mental midget.
You wouldn't sit and recognize one if you saw it walking down the street?
I've never interacted with someone who works in the agencies that isn't deeply committed and well qualified, and I want to make that very clear.
Good point.
Now, one of the major issues that then comes is not just that the financiers that are close know better, which I do believe they do, but also oftentimes financing is then waiting, knowing that these loan programs exist, to see if there will be a first actor from government support that they can then wait and transfer the risk onto the program. And so it's a duplicate problem. One is there may in fact be a lack of knowledge of the specifics of time and place with projects for individual bureaucrats. Or individual agencies. But at the same time, you may have financing that's being done in the marketplace that is waiting to see if these programs will actually be utilized and whether or not they can wait and then make loans later on once the regulatory uncertainty has been solved.
Mr. Haygood, would you agree with that?
I would say the program is a win-win-win, okay? It's a win for our customers because it puts downward pressure on their rates and de-risks the capital funding. It puts returns, provides a return back to the American taxpayer, as we paid $1.15 billion in interest on our loans. And it also helps further the president's energy dominance agenda as we build out our infrastructure to serve new AI and large customers.
Right, and this is an interesting question. I just came to mind. So your company, Southern Company, must have at least one person or a whole office that is dedicated to managing, looking at that risk, calculating the risk, the cost of money today and in the future, and making that decision. Is that safe to say?
We have several teams.
And then,
yes.
yeah, would you say it's 10 people, 15 people, to 45 people, or do you really, do you know?
Well, we have a pretty broad integrated resource planning process.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Walsh, I'm going to come to you. Do you agree with what Dr. Yonk and Mr. Haygood has just outlined?
Well, first of all, let me say that a mental midget would not have lasted one day in LPO. It's a very demanding
They
job.
last in Congress, unfortunately.
Well, there is a very talented team of folks, many of whom recruited from the private sector, from finance, law, consulting, et cetera. But when you talk about comparing LPO's decision-making to the decision-making of private sector lenders, you got to remember that LPO has access to the 10,000 scientists and engineers across the DOE complex, including the national labs. And they have the patience to work with these companies, right? So you might have a company that comes in with a new technology. You can bring in the best folks from the Office of Nuclear Energy to look at it, and they can take time. They can sit down with those companies, and they can come up with ways to mitigate the technology risk that sometimes will take the form of conditions precedent before the company can close a loan or draw on the loan. These are which it may never come, right? There are some projects that get to conditional commitment that never ever close because they never meet their technical milestones. Banks don't really have an interest in doing that. They, of course, typically don't have the technical expertise, but they don't really have the time and patience to work on deals for a long time that may never close.
Yeah, well, I would say that banks probably have a broader purview. They have a broader marketplace, if you will, not just those who are trying to get an initial start. But anyway, thank you for that observation. I'm going to yield now to the representative from California, Representative Friedman.
Thank you, Chair Weber and Ranking Member Ross, and to our witnesses for coming to testify today. Mr. Walsh, a very notable company in California, one that you're probably very familiar with, benefited enormously from the ATVM loan, which is the Department of Energy's Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Program. Do you know which company I'm talking about?
I suspect you're referring to Tesla Motors.
Exactly. It's funny to me that Elon Musk, whose company received $465 million in loans from this very program in 2010, is now actively working to dismantle the federal program that helped him launch his success. The contradiction is pretty striking. Musk has directly benefited from a government-backed program that spurs innovation, yet he now seeks to undermine those very same programs that foster innovation and progress in clean energy and transportation, something that is so important. Mr. Walsh, can you speak to your success implementing DOE's clean energy financial assistance programs and how DOE's Office of General Counsel will suffer from Musk's purging of the people that make this program successful?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Representative Friedman. We're talking about losses to the program of, at least 60% based on these press reports, and maybe more if the threatened reductions in force take place. I don't think that the office is going to be able to function at the level, at the capacity that the American people should expect if you have that level of kind of abrupt terminations.
So Tesla was a startup, and it's now a global leader. It's a vehicle that people enjoy, and it's a huge American success story. And why should one company benefit from this and then try to pull that ladder up from everyone else? Isn't there a benefit to all of our American startups to having this kind of innovative funding for innovation?
I think there is, yes.
So in California, we are very committed to clean energy. We have huge smog problems that we've dealt with, the difference in the air quality from a couple years ago and now, and it's really profound because of the regulations we have and the investments that it's spurned. So we are investing in renewables and battery storage and local energy resilience. And we are at the forefront of reinforcing our nation's energy dominance. And the goal is very simple. It's to generate clean, affordable, reliable energy that's immune to global energy price shocks and threats from adversarial regimes. It's homegrown energy. And that investment is central to the state's 100% clean energy by 2045 goal. We are a top recipient in California of LPO-supported clean energy projects. Mr. Walsh, in your opinion, would California's leadership in clean energy exist without the DOE's Loan Program Office? And what do you think California should be prepared for going into the future with this administration?
I have not studied exactly the benefits to California, but it is clear to me that California has for decades been kind of the seedbed of innovation in energy in addition to other tech areas. And so lots of companies, we talked about one, but there are lots of companies that have benefited. The pioneering of utility scale solar that I referenced earlier has had immense positive impacts for the state of California. And if we want to keep that record of innovation going, if we want to continue to add new resources to the grid to sort of develop our U.S. supply chains, we need to keep this program going.
Right, so in California, we're now the 4th largest economy in the world as of last week, and we have a STEM economy. We have a creative economy where our investments that we put into science and into innovation creates the companies that are going to solve the world's problems and also power our economy. So it seems to me very short-sighted to reduce America's competitiveness when other nations invest in science in their countries because they see the benefit to their strategic interests, but also to their economies. Mr. Haygood, can you speak to Southern Company's clean energy projects that wouldn't have moved forward without this program? And more broadly, do you think the private sector should and can do it alone, or do we have a multiplier effect from having government partnerships and investment?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your question. We do believe in an all-of-the-above approach. We have a lot of technologies that we're looking to deploy. We've, of course, just put online the nation's first new nuclear plants in the last 30 years. Ultimately, utilities need capital to finance our projects. The existing capital markets alone can't efficiently finance the amount of infrastructure that utilities need to develop and deliver on the President's energy dominance agenda. LPO dollars, therefore, accelerate that infrastructure development.
Thank you very much for your clear and concise answers, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, and Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Dr. Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to move, since we've got such expert talent here, I'd like to move to where we can get your perspective on what this committee might or should be doing to help improve this project. So I guess I'm going to start with this question. Should Congress require regular DOE reporting on project funding and the status to provide greater oversight and accountability of this LPO process and on other demonstration project expenditures? So, Dr. Yonk, you get to start again.
I think the clear answer to that is yes. More oversight from this committee and the members are essential to programs operating within the parameters that are set by the law and by Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Absolutely. I mean, the LPO has, or at least as of January, was issuing annual reports and monthly activity reports, puts a lot of data out on its website, but I think, the more transparency, the better.
How much peer review do you think occurs in this process? I mean, you said it's on the website. How much are other scientists monitoring that or giving feedback or input or?
Well, in terms of the financing decision, there are multiple points of what you might consider sort of peer or external review. Every one of these loans is separately reviewed by the Office of Management and Budget, by the Department of Treasury. There is a risk management division within LPO that's separate from the deal teams that looks at each deal. And then there's the credit review board, which is composed of senior leaders from the department, from places outside of LPO who all look at and scrutinize each loan or loan guarantee that goes through the process.
Mr. Haygood, how's your experience been with the Southern?
It's a very rigorous review process, and to some extent rightfully so. The Loan Program Office needs to ensure that the projects are eligible under the statutes. I do believe that for investment-grade counterparties like Southern Company that pay our debt, there should be a little bit more streamlined process. We're rated by each of the rating agencies, and probably a little less investigation needs to be to take place.
So then one final question. You know, I am really pleased that we have the national laboratories. They do a lot of the basic research that I think stimulates the economy, stimulates investment. So I would just ask your perspective on the national labs and how they interact with the LPOs and having the information necessary to make the kind of decisions to make loans.
So they certainly could be a resource that can and should be utilized. Beyond that, I don't have comments. Yeah.
Well, they are. I mean, they are utilized, and that's one of the great benefits of this program, right? If you want to build a new advanced nuclear facility in the United States, you have world-class experts from Idaho National Lab, from Oak Ridge, and other places that are there available to LPO to kind of think through its decision-making, to think through technology risks and how to mitigate them.
Mr. Haygood?
I don't really have anything to add. Thank you.
Well, I thank all of you. I appreciate your information, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Representative Riley from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Yonk, I want to continue on the conversation we were having earlier. I think after our exchange, I heard you say I counted 3 times that additional research was needed with respect to various parts of the program. Was that correct?
Probably.
Is one of the areas that you think additional research is needed with respect to whether Title 17 programs are meeting up their objectives with respect to economic growth? That requires additional research, correct?
I think additional research would be valuable in that area.
Because we can't, at this point, draw definitive conclusions about it, correct?
And at no point in a policy process can you draw final definitive, and so if the program's to continue, additional research is always valuable.
Right, and you haven't conducted yourself any independent study of the relationship between Section 1703 and economic growth, correct?
That is correct.
You don't dispute that LPO's created about 50,000 permanent jobs across the country, correct?
I have no reason to dispute that at this time.
Right, and you have no reason to dispute that it's also created tens of thousands of additional temporary jobs, particularly in construction, correct?
I have no information that would suggest that's inaccurate.
Okay, so when you wrote in your testimony and then told us today, quote, since its creation, the Title 17 Loan Guarantee Program has largely failed to meet its objectives of promoting economic growth, you actually don't know one way or the other whether that's the case, correct?
I think there were large-scale and very broad suggestions that it would do incredible things, and I don't think it's delivered that level.
Based on just your thoughts and your feelings about it?
Based on the analysis of the available evidence, which is inadequate, and needs more research done.
Okay, so it would have been more accurate for you to have testified to this committee that since its creation, the Title 17 Loan Guarantee Program may be failing to meet its objectives on economic growth, but more research is needed.
I don't agree with that characterization.
So you stand by your testimony as a definitive conclusion that the Title 17 Loan Guarantee Program has largely failed to meet its objectives of promoting economic growth?
I stand by that being my interpretation of the available data.
And what available data is this exactly? Because in that very definitive and conclusive statement that you offered to this committee, you didn't provide any citation to any research whatsoever.
We've gone through this before, Mr. Riley.
Well,
I have nothing additional to add.
It's still unclear to me if you can name one study. Name one. We have 2 minutes. You can think about it. Can you name one study that shows that, quote, the Title 17 Loan Guarantee Program has largely failed to meet its objectives of promoting economic growth?
You've asked this question multiple times.
I haven't gotten an answer to it.
I have no additional information to provide you.
Can you cite one study that
Off the top of
supports
my
that
head, I
proposition?
cannot.
You can't. How about with respect to improving the environment? Do you think additional research is needed to determine whether Title 17 has been successful for improving the environment?
I do not, I believe additional research is always valuable. I don't think it's needed to indicate that there have not been substantial environmental effects of these programs.
Your testimony is that, so, sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding what your testimony is. Are you saying that the Title 17 loan program has failed to meet its objectives of improving the environment?
Yes.
And based on what?
Based on research I've done throughout the green energy sector and the policies that have been implemented.
I'm not talking about the green energy sector generally. I'm talking about what we're talking about this hearing, what you wrote in your testimony. Title 17, have you conducted any study to determine whether Title 17 loan guarantee program has met its objectives with respect to improving the environment? Have you conducted any of those studies, yes or no?
Conducted a specific
You have not
study.
conducted
I have
one of those.
conducted a general one of general programs that include these.
That includes Section 1703. What's that study?
That study was published in Nature Unbound. It was about at the midpoint of the current use of the program.
And what year was that?
That was in 2015.
2015, so over 10 years ago. In the last 10 years then, and did that study specifically look at Section 1703?
Those were included as part of the programs operated by DOE.
What did you find in your
Section 17.
What did you find in your study with
We
respect
found
to
that
let me finish my question, please. What did you find in your study with respect to the connection between Section 1703 loan programs and environmental impacts?
That there was not an indication that there was substantive effects of any particular loan in changing the environmental outcomes.
Okay. Would you please provide that to the committee, and very specifically your basis for your testimony that the Title 17 loan guarantee program has largely failed to meet its objectives of improving the environment? I'd like to see exactly what you're relying on for that statement, because you don't deny, do you, that the Section 17 program has displaced over 80 million tons of CO2. Do you deny that?
I do not have any basis on which to make a determination if that's accurate in front of me.
Okay, and you're going to be saved by the bell here in a second, but I'll look forward to, I'll submit some additional questions for the record. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. I want to thank the witnesses for your valuable testimony today and the members for their questions. The record will remain open for 10 days for additional comments and written questions from the members. This hearing is adjourned.